what they can do, man. I don't know what they can do. I think the idea of monitoring the entire 360 degrees of Earth's sky is virtually impossible.
If they turned the satellites around and started trying, they could.
You think so?
Yeah, I've seen the studies on it.
Well, then what do you do when one's coming? You got some 5-mile wide hunk of metal that's heading towards the Earth. What do?
You put weapon systems in space, but then you don't want the treaties against that, because whoever has weapon systems can turn them back towards Earth.
Oh, it's also...
Don't worry, Joe. The weapon systems are there.
Oh, I'm sure they are. I mean, you know, I've read all that stuff about the Star Wars scientists, how many different scientists turned out missing or dead, and some strange, you know...
Bob Bowman's in the hospital right now. He's actually in Fall of the Republic. He was the head of Star Wars, and he won't talk about it when I talk to him in private, but he said, I'll tell you what's declassified, because NSA spokesman and Space Command spokesman have let some of it out. When he was there in the late 70s, they announced it in the 80s, it was around the 70s, they had an entire fleet of unmanned aircraft up there, Black Manas, space planes, but they don't use nuclear weapons. They use meteor guns, and they drop solid DU sabos into orbit that accelerate to 30,000 miles an hour, and they can kill people 5 miles under the ground. And it's a global decapitation weapon where they could wipe out the whole leadership of the world in a matter of minutes. Wow.
And that's all real stuff?
That's ultra top secret, the stuff that's leaked, yeah.
Meteor guns? That sounds like an episode of Scooby-Doo.
Well, no. I mean, it doesn't. It has a rocket booster on the back of, say, a 100-pound sabot.
What's a sabot?
That's, say, where you take a .223 round and shoot it out of a .50 caliber round, so it has even more acceleration power. And it's a sabot because it's got a rocket booster on it, so it would speed up to 18, 20,000 miles an hour. Instead, 30, 35, 40,000 miles an hour. The space planes are already going...
That is like the speed of meteors, right? They hit 45,000 miles.
And that's why it's called a meteor gun, because...
Wow.
Because when these birds are about to attack, they accelerate, coming in at an angle on the atmosphere to accelerate, so there's already a greater acceleration than a meteor would normally have. Then they fire with a high-powered rocket booster a solid DU round, which with its kinetic energy when it hits has the power of a medium-yield nuclear weapon.
God damn. I believe it. You know, I mean, I believe that it's possible. I believe if they're willing to blow up Hiroshima and Nagasaki the way they did, why wouldn't they come up with something like that? You know.
Well, believe me, the NSA will be watching this later. Joe, what do you want to? You want to say hi to him?
I want to say I'm a true patriot. I pay my taxes. Leave me alone, please. What are you going to say? You know, I mean, the real problem is that we are moving in a certain direction. We've been moving in this direction for a long time in this society, and in virtually every society that's ever existed. Every society that has incredible power eventually winds up going into corruption and falling apart. Every empire collapses. And it's because of corruption.
Exactly. But this scientific dictatorship admits in their public documents that they've studied all of that, and they've built a scientific dictatorship so people can't get out of it. Joe, I have hundreds. I always, you know, we joke about documents, but I have hundreds of documents, textbooks, government books, and reports, UN documents, Pentagon documents. This was written by the White House science czar, John P. Holdren, and it was written by one of Bush's advisors, Bush Sr., Paul R. Ehrlich. This calls for putting sterilants in the water to sterilize people, the vaccines, poisoning us, world population reductions of 80%. It is real, and a lot of people can rationalize and say, yeah, there are too many people, instead of understanding, wait, I'm under attack too. They are attacking us, and this guy recently declassified chemtrails, and it made almost no news, and said, yeah, we've been spraying you with barium salts and aluminum dioxide. What do you say to that?
What is the chemtrails? What's the purpose of the chemtrails? Is it weather control experiments?
Yes. He says geoengineering or terraforming to save us from global warming.
There's certainly a difference in the way the clouds look. You know, if you look at some clouds that are way up high, or rather, you know, some trails from jets, it's like they dissipate. They're in the air like they always have been, and then as the plane is moving, you can actually see them dissipate. But then you have these other ones that, like, they linger and they spread out and they literally become clouds. In L.A., they're everywhere. You know, I don't know what that is. Honestly, I have not looked into it.
Well, the incredible thing is scientists that were outside the government did test it, did look at it. They said it's barium salts.
How did they test it? They went up in the air and scooped it up?
Yes, they used aircraft and also got ground samples. And they said this is barium salts, aluminum dioxide, weather modification, nuclei. They declassified some of it 5 years ago. I got Ben Livingston, the father of weather weapons, on. Then 8 months ago, Poldrin, the White House science czar, gives a press conference and says, we've been studying it, and it's aluminum dioxide, barium salts. We're doing it to save you. And it turns out a guy got a Nobel Prize in '92 for developing it. But the point is, there's a giant weather modification program going on. They finally admit it, and it's no big deal.
That's pretty crazy.
Joe, in the last 5 minutes or so we have in the special transmission, I want to thank you for coming in. I know you're a guy that loves freedom and is against...
Who doesn't? Who hates freedom?
The globalists hate freedom.
No one's sitting around going, man, I hate freedom. Maybe prisoners that get institutionalized.
Well, the establishment doesn't like freedom.
They hate freedom.
They want to condition people, brainwash them, control them. Let's spend some time here on some lighter notes.
Okay.
Is Brock Lesnar ever going to fight Fedor?
Well, Brock Lesnar right now has mononucleosis. Brock Lesnar has not been able to train, and they've postponed his fight. He was supposed to be fighting Shane Carwin, and that was in November, and they had to postpone it to January. Now there's talk that they may have to postpone it even further if he can't train, because he's been really sick. He hasn't been able to train. And then Lesnar, or Shane Carwin, rather, had H1N1. He lost like 20 pounds due to the flu. So it's, Brock's in a bad situation right now. There's a bunch of guys that have mono. I've heard it. My friend is one of the members of Jeremy Horn's gym. Jeremy Horn's a pretty famous MMA fighter, and at least 2 guys from his gym came down with mono. So
why?
It's spreading. I think mono is it's an infectious disease, right? You can transmit it from person to person. And these guys, when you're training, you're doing jiu-jitsu and wrestling with each other. That's a lot of sweating on each other, and you get each other's bugs. That's why you never want to do jiu-jitsu with a guy who's got a cold, because you're going to get his cold. You sweat on each other. It's kind of gross when you think about it.
I hear you're a pretty good jiu-jitsu guy.
I'm pretty good. I'm decent. For guys who aren't good, I'm good.
Wasn't there some talk about you and fighting some movie star?
Yeah, it was Wesley Snipes. Yeah. It was his idea, but he changed his mind. But I was training for it. I just thought, he doesn't know jiu-jitsu. If you don't know jiu-jitsu and someone grabs a hold of you, it's like, what are you going to do? You're going to just ad-lib your way out of this? I'm going to choke you. You don't know what you're doing. Jiu-jitsu is like a long process. It takes a long time to learn. And someone who really doesn't understand it, he has no knowledge of it at all. If you watch the early UFCs, you see how that goes. Hoist Gracie gets on top of you and chokes you out. That's what happens. It's a very complex martial art. If you don't understand it, or at least have some defense, you're in a lot of trouble.
So it's more like chess versus...
Yeah. It's technique. It's technique and understanding of the positions. And most people just don't know what to do, and your natural instincts will betray you every time. If you don't know jiu-jitsu and someone does and you roll with them, every single time your natural instincts give you up. You don't realize that you're making mistakes. You don't know what you're defending against. You don't know what's coming. So you don't know how to put yourself in the right position, so you give up a position. And if you give up a position with a guy who knows jiu-jitsu, he's going to tap you out. It's just how it goes. It's a helpless feeling. When I first learned jiu-jitsu, starting out as like a white belt, I remember just getting dominated by guys where they would just crush you. They would just grab you, get on top of you, and choke you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And it's a horribly helpless feeling. Ari is getting pretty good now. Ari's a blue belt. And are you a blue belt yet? No? But he's tapped some people. You've tapped some people, right? He's been doing it for a couple of years. But when Ari started out, not only was Ari not doing any sports, he wasn't doing anything. He was smoking cigarettes, and he was just... You play basketball every now and then? How often? Once or twice a week, folks. Basketball. Okay, so he played a little basketball. But, he went from no martial arts experience whatsoever to actually tapping guys out. He hung in there. I'm proud of him.
So it's really good for people for self-defense.
Yes, it's great for self-defense, and it's also great for exercise because it's really fun. It's interesting. What's that?
If you're looking to rape.
Yeah, if you're looking to get good at rape, it's the best. Boy or girl, whatever you're trying to do. It's a fascinating sport. It's a fascinating martial art because it's a whole series of movements, and it's never ending. Like me and a buddy of mine were just drilling a new move the other day, and we're talking about it. He's a brown belt. I'm a brown belt too, and he's like, it never ends. There's always a new move. There's a new sweep, and this new sweep that we were learning the other day is just this revolutionary new sweep. And everybody's like, man, how did I not see this before? But it's always been there. It's just the movements of people. When you have unlimited mobility with your body, you can move, especially if you're really flexible, you move your body in a certain way, and then you got 2 arms to attack, 2 legs to attack, and the neck. And there's so many different possibilities, so many different ways to attack someone. It's really like a kinetic game of chess. It really is.
Wow, that is, and a lot of people. A lot of people aren't looking for a fight, so they never train in any type of martial art.
But it's stupid.
But everybody should get their girls, their boys. Yes. Everybody should be trained to defend yourself.
Yes, it's